Good morning. We are just about to start. It's now 2 minutes. It's 2 minutes to 1:30. So we'll start in 2 minutes. And I just decided to start a little bit earlier to save time. So I could take the first introduction before. You have seen there's an echo in here. Is there still an echo? Yeah. We have the same system as yesterday. We have sessions with 3 speakers. We have a break, and at the end we have some group work. The panel discussions are there, so I don't need to explain. I'll just want to welcome the first speakers from Sweden, Bengt Sundbaum and Lena Hammarback. And they will tell us about the links to social media. I'll just find your presentation and make it appear here. Så, varsågoda.
Thank you.
Well, good morning. I'm sorry, I like walk around. My name is Lena Hammarback, and besides of being, do you hear me? Shall I go a little? There's some echo. What shall I do about that?
Just talk.
Oh, okay.
Go on.
Shut up. Okay. And besides being a grandmother and mother and the wife of this man, I'm a retired psychologist. I used to work in schools but also in occupational health care. And for the last 10 years, I worked as an organizational psychologist.
And I'm Bengt. I'm a former teacher, public health officer on a national level. And both of us have volunteered a lot in different Swedish organizations. Well, we have worked together with volunteering, and therefore we also do this presentation together. As you see, we also have a dog on the photo.
Let me give you a brief summary of climate work in Sweden today. Since last autumn, we have a new right-wing government, and they are totally dependent on a climate-denying party, Sweden Democrats. Maybe you heard of them. The cuts in the climate budgets is very severe, and even the government admits that. And there is no way that Swedish climate goals will be achieved. The Swedish forest lobby is also very powerful, focused on short-term profits interests. But still, many Swedes, especially seniors, are aware of the climate change, and about 50% are willing to change lifestyle habits. And they also want the politics to focus more on climate measures.
Unfortunately, there is a gap between people's concern about the climate and how they vote in general elections. And this is illustrated by a march of sadness or grieving march for the climate in Stockholm. You see people dressed in black, drums and so on. I will talk a little bit about voluntary work in Sweden and a little bit about some figures. Unfortunately, they are a bit old, from 2014. But you can see that Swedes work voluntary for 131 billion Swedish crowns each year. That's more than 3% of the gross national product. And volunteers worked, contributed with 17%. I think the figures are quite similar in the different Nordic countries. Many of us think that voluntary work has decreased recent decades, but figures show that it has increased slightly at least. And we think that, especially for old people, after retirement, you stop working, you need a substitute for your work and social fellowship, and voluntary work can offer that. So we think that retirement is a golden opportunity to engage more older people, and also access to a network, individual social competence, increases the probability for people to work voluntarily.
Well, I will give you some examples of voluntary work. This is our local group in Norrtälje, where we demonstrate every Saturday. There are lots of local groups in cities and small communities in Sweden. We call these a climate meeting point, and we invite people to discuss climate issues with us. And we also distribute leaflets. And you see our dog Alice is there, and I assure you it's much easier to discuss climate issues when there is a dog listening. All these groups can do a lot of things, like public climate days in squares and malls, exhibitions, presentation, and debates with local politicians. We also have bicycle demonstration. You saw this demonstration of grief. We also have slowly demonstration when you walk very, very slowly. That impresses people, really. And between all these groups, there is lots of cooperation and exchange of experiences, not in the least on Facebook or Zoom meetings.
Okay. Some figures. I was former teacher in mathematics, therefore I have to give you some figures at least. You can say that when it comes to seniors and internet and social media, almost 50% of 65 to 74 years old are active on social media. According to a regional survey in Stockholm, it's 90% of 69ers to 79ers who are active on internet. Okay. Sorry, the picture we showed is, of course, GRETHE is one of the persons, and we also had a guest from Peru, Hugo Blanco, who's a famous farmer leader. Okay.
Okay. Here you can see some examples of all the future groups. There's a lot for future groups, and they sort of popped up after Greta Thunberg started her strikes. And all these groups stand behind the youth in Fridays for Future. And I must underline that when it comes to national or international activities that these groups do, Fridays for Future, the young people are in the lead. They decide when or what is going to happen. And we, all the other for future groups, we support them, help them, maybe we can give them some money for things they need to their marches. And we march behind. The youth walks first. Oh, but of course there is no group for dogs yet.
So you can also say that let 1,000 flowers bloom. Well, in spite of all these different groups, retired people, seniors, felt that there was no special group for them. They didn't feel that they belonged to any of these groups. So therefore, in December 2018, Grandparents for Future was established as a Facebook group. And we think that the word grandparents has a special value, stressing out older generations' responsibility for coming generations. We have no formal board, no formal membership, no finances. We have an inner circle of administrators, and we can get some sponsors from other organizations like the Swedish Nature Conservation Association and so on.
This group has steadily been growing, and from this last time I looked at the Facebook, we were around 1,000 members. And they come from all over Sweden, but of course many lives around Stockholm and around Stockholm or Gothenburg, the big cities. We also do a demonstration every Saturday in front of the Prime Minister's house, or residence, really. It's a very beautiful house. We just want him to know we are keeping an eye on you. Maybe But there is also a lot of cooperation with other groups like GRETHE's Gamlingar, and there is also grandparents Panthers.
Yes, Grandpanthers.
Grandpanthers, yes. It's a small group, but they demonstrate once a month on a Wednesday in Stockholm. Here you can see a grief. The first picture this is in front of the residence of the Prime Minister, and the other is it's a theater thing where people ends up dying. It's very dramatic, really. And of course, we have a lot of activities and cooperation with other groups. Okay.
Okay. One more example on activities we work with is writing articles, trying to get them published in newspapers. And a couple of years ago, we wrote an article with a headline, "We grandparents object to passing a wrecked climate to coming generations." And the Scottish Geographical Journal was interested and published it in a special edition, which was distributed at the COP conference 26 in Glasgow. And the picture you see is from a march in Glasgow. And I will just read a small passage because it gives some more perspectives on older people and the climate. Many of us grandparents experienced the 1960s and 70s when the gap between the young generation and the establishment grew wide, resulting in riots and disturbances. Today, we are concerned about the widening gap between generations and how young people are losing their trust in society's ability to handle crises and threats against the survival of humanity. And according to surveys undertaken in Sweden, 6 out of 10 youngsters think that those in power neither listen to nor care about people's suggestions and point of view. And scientists are noticing an increase in mental health problems as a direct consequence of global warming.
This is our main demands of our politicians. And this happy man, that is Kalle Göttler, and he is one of our founders. And by the way, he is also a writer of children's books, and he has been published here in Iceland. Maybe someone knows of him. Here you can see this. You see all the shoes there. During the pandemic, we weren't able to walk into the streets, so we just put shoes there. This is a shoe demonstration. And you also see many of us are quite fit, and this is you can see a bicycle demonstration. Okay?
Some lessons learned, you can read it by yourself because, of course, it's okay to distribute this presentation. As I said, we have no formal democracy in the group because it's a Facebook group, and that means that the administrators have a great responsibility. And as I also said, we can't apply for economic support. On the other hand, it's easy to use the Facebook group to inform all members all over Sweden. It also gives a feeling that you are not alone in your struggle. And we can focus on climate issues without spending time on formalities and bureaucracy. And we can also use pictures for communication, and we know that's very powerful.
Yeah, I think so. Why on earth should you be an old climate activist? Well, why not? We are quite a big group in Sweden. 28% of Swedish voters are plus 65, but only 4% of our MPs. Well, the climate crisis is mainly caused by us and our parents. We also think that concern for future generation are gradually growing with age. Don't you agree? Time's out. Can we have another minute, please? Thank you. Well, many of us still have a large network, and we have plenty of time, as was said yesterday, also experience of life. And hand in hand with our young generation, we can still contribute, we think. And we also know from before that activism can be very powerful. I will just... Sorry, I will just quote something more from our article. The end. However, most of us who protested against the Vietnam War are convinced that the massive global actions of that period really contributed to end that war in 1975. Massive global protests make a difference. This is an important and hopeful lesson learned in our past and younger lives, which we might now share with today's young people and not at least our grandchildren.
And finally, we will end with a quote of Gus Speth. He's a founder of the World Resources Institute, and he's the former director of UNDP. He said once, "I used to think the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystem collapse, and climate change, but I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. To combat those, you don't need more facts, but nothing less than a cultural and spiritual revolution. And we researchers don't know how to do that. Maybe we grandparents can contribute a little bit to this." Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening.
I was wrong.
Okay. Thank you so much for this, Bengt and Lena. Before going to the next one, I want to make 2 comments. One of them is just to remind you on using Slido to prepare for the panel work. I hope you managed to get into Slido yesterday, where you can write your questions and you can vote for questions that are already there, and we'll use Slido as much as we can during the panel. The second is that yesterday there was a request that the presentations would be made available afterwards, and we are planning to do it. And I said yesterday we will do it if we will be allowed by the presenters. And I think I'll change it a little bit. We will publish it afterwards if no one is against it. So if you don't like your presentation, any of you, if you don't like your presentation to be published on a website, just let me know. But otherwise, I will by default think that you agree on it, that it will be published. Okay. But let me know if you have any problems. There might be some problems because of property rights or whatever. Next up is Matti NUMMELIN from the Finnish organization ILMASTOISOVANHEMMAT. Sorry about the pronunciation. And he came here. You didn't take the flight?
Yeah. 3 nights rolling in at the Northern Atlantic. It was nice.
Yeah. Now it should be on. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And before I forget, and before you all forget, that we are very thankful for our Icelandic hosts organizing this, because this is a great moment for all of us. So let's give a big hand for them. So I'm Matti NUMMELIN. I'm spent most of my life as an environmental activist in a government. The last I was in the academy before, and then I came for 20 years for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where I retired, and I happened to be one of those EU negotiators who negotiated Paris Agreement. So, but now I am just an NGO activist and a secretary of the Finnish Climate Grandparents. And as you can see, this is our uniform saying that grandparents urge climate action. So we are there on the Parliament stair every Friday with the Fridays of Future Helsinki. And we are there 2 hours. And the Parliament stair is a good place. That's what, because the MPs often pass there. So we have more or less good relations to many MPs. But it was informal relation, and now we have this. We got this autumn a new idea that we have a special godmothers and godfathers among the MPs, and change the information and also discuss how to proceed and what could we do, how they can help us and how we can help them. And so far we have already managed to recruit, for example, 2 ex-ministers as our one godfather and one godmother. So we are also attending other type of demonstrations among the environmental NGOs, and there is this. On the left-hand side, there is a forest march, and there on the right, there is a Russian train transporting coal to one port of Finland. It was the young activist stopped it, but we wanted to support the young ones and showed that no, this is also a matter of the grandparents, that no Russian coal anymore to Finnish ports. And we arranged seminars, and we had an election this April, and the result was quite similar than in Sweden. So there is a far right, is a strong party in the cabinet along the conservatives, and among the far right ministers there are even open climate deniers, which is very, very sad. So, but we went around the election tents before the election and discussed with the candidates. And well, then about this modern technology. Actually, Swedes told quite nicely just a moment ago that how to use internet. And also it was interesting data you had about that 65 plus have a 90% of, they can use the internet, but 80 plus, there is a quite small amount. But we are going there. So we are having a reading circle which meets in internet. There are not necessarily our members, paid members. Anybody can join and we discuss once a month on 2 books. Usually we have one non-fiction book and one fiction book, which are dealing more or less about environmental issues. And then the leader of the reading circle writes a summary what we discuss on them. And this summary is published on our webpage, and it's also published on our Facebook page. So we share the information about this. So this is our modern technology, if you wish. We are also preparing unofficial statements, writing letters to parliamentary groups and also the EU decision makers. And one thing I want to nobody has mentioned, we heard yesterday from Norwegians that the healthy environment is a human right. But I hope that you are aware that children's right, there is a commission for children's right who is interpreting what the children's right mean in practice. And they produce so-called general comments. And now the general comment number 26 came out about a month ago. It was formally introduced on 18th of September. And that general comment on children's rights is concentrated on climate change and environment. And these general comments, they are not legally binding documents, but they give advice for the government officials how they should interpret the children's right, and also for the courts. They give that we have heard yesterday about the court cases, and there is a strong support that children could and we as an adults could help them to apply in courts if their rights for healthy environment and the impacts of climate change are impacted. And there are also some requirements for the business. So we are waiting that the official translation in the Finnish comes, and also when we get from Swedes the official translation from Swedes, because we have a bilingual country. And then we write a letter to the MPs, together with all other NGOs who want to join us. We have already alerted the organizations in Finland who have been working with the children's rights that are they willing to join us for this letter for MPs. But I really recommend that you read it carefully and think that what you can do in your country. And then we are, well, this is an example. This is an face-to-face first meeting, international meeting we are in of the senior people, and that's when very encouraging. We are also a member of the Grandparents for Climate, the European organization. Actually, it's going to have a meeting in Brussels in late November, early December during the climate COP, and I hope that your organizations are invited. If not, make sure that you will attend. So we are. They, for example, the request that all we have contacted our member of the European Parliament and requested that can we sit down with this and discuss with you about the climate issues, and many of them have replied positively, and also the Finnish commissioner has replied positively that she wants to discuss with the Finnish senior climate activists. And about Finland, what happened? Well, it's the same story as I said in Sweden. If we looked at what happened in the opinion polls compared, well, this was done in January. So 72% of Finns agree that urgent action for climate mitigation is needed. And the climate change is a global threat, that's 77%. But what is disappointing is the trend that climate change, if you compare the figures from 2019 and 2023, actually the interest has gone down. And that's a little bit worrying idea. And we had parliamentary election in March, and as I said, that maybe I don't go there because I see you standing there and I tell that the story is almost the same as in Sweden. And as you see that we have there our banderoles in several languages. We have Finnish, Swedish, English, German, and then we also, because if there are some people passing by and shout that go to China, we have also the Chinese banderole, and we can invite, please come here if you want to impact Chinese. Unfortunately, we don't have the Norwegian one. Maybe we should have one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Matti. Our next speaker comes from Denmark, GRETHE Hansen, and she will address how we can reach new members. And after that, we will go to the panel, or those three our last three speakers will come to the panel. And so I will again remind you on using Slido to document your questions. Yep. Vær så god.
I want to introduce myself. I'm Danish, but I've been living in Iceland in almost 40 years, and I've also been living in Norway, and I have daughter in in Sweden. So I feel somehow very connected to very many of you. I'm pleased to be here. I returned to Denmark some years ago, and I'm living there now. And after a while, I decided to engage in organizations in Denmark. And I started with elderly organizations because I had been working with elderly people also before, and I was interested in surroundings, where you live, and how accessible it is, okay. And so I thought somehow it was nice to start out there, but after a while I found out that I was not so interested in myself any longer, how to make things be good for me when I get old. And then I learned about grandparents' climate action in Denmark and visited them. They didn't have any website or Facebook site at that time. Oh yes, they had a Facebook site, just started. So I went to meetings, and soon I was, I couldn't leave again. That's just how to say it. It was a new world for me, and I hadn't really realized how fast climate change was going on, and how important it was to spread out the message about it. Yes. Oh, kan jeg også afstige? Okay. I was asked to talk about how to reach new members, and I thought a lot about that because we are not thinking so much about having new members, perhaps, or to be very many. We are trying to reach out to people and to communicate the climate change. But of course, in that way, you get people to connect with you and go into the movement also. We are talking a lot about today how is it going to reach people, and are we being heard? People sometimes ask us when we're in the streets, oh, it's nice to see you and you're doing so good things. Are the politicians listening to you? And of course, we can't always know. So, and also, are people listening to you? So we decided to do more about that, to find out how we really should communicate with people to get the message heard and to get people engaged in the climate crisis. So who are we? Grandparents Climate Action in Denmark is a grassroots and activist movement. It was founded in 2017 by a person who was the same name as mine, Grete, and she was in Aarhus and started the movement there. And very soon, 3 other local groups started in Copenhagen and Odense, auf Fyn, and Aalborg. In fact, there was an inspiration from Norway, although we knew that Norway now was not a grassroots and activist movement only, but an association. But she had been in Norway and had participated in some of the actions there. So we are still people aged 50 plus, concerning about the world we are leaving for future generations. And we are seeking to spread this message about the good climate choice and to pressure the politicians to take responsibility and act for a quick and effective green transition. And in fact, we are rather political. Not that we decide which party, but we are rather political. And how are we organized? because we are in this grassroots movement, we are under the climate movement. That is an umbrella in Denmark, and we are one of the groups in there. And they have a website where they definite where they're talking about the different thematic groups. I have to say that we had a website too, but one of our challenges have been that it was hacked. The host was hacked, and our website went down. It's totally disappeared. So very many informations have been lost. And for a moment, you won't get in connection with us with the link that's in the report from the Nordic, from this, from you. The national movement, it became a national movement from in the years 2017-18. And we have a common framework between the cities. And we have a national meeting once a year now, and that's very nice to meet from the other groups. We have a spokesman in every town or group, and they meet online twice a year, 6 times a year, or physically. We have, many of us have Facebook pages now, and this web page that is not functioning right now. We have now 9 local groups of grandparents, as you see, and they are in this map, and I guess you know where all the towns are, but many of them are, as you see, in Jutland and around our Aarhus, and they have started, perhaps people have started in Aarhus, coming a long way from, and then they started their own group later on. So now we have 357 members in all in Denmark. Our focus area is to get information, to learn about the climate crisis and to inform about the climate crisis. And we have used a lot of time for that. In the beginning, we had a course. We got a donation, 70,000 Danish crowns, to make courses for us. So we would be dressed to go out and talk to people about the climate crisis and about ways to act. And so we that was a nice beginning. But then also we have gone to a lot of courses, and in the COVID time, when you couldn't go out and demonstrate, we used time to learn and study. And the universities were very good at offering speeches from very good scientists in that time. We have dialogues in the streets in most of the groups that we have in Denmark. We go to senior centers and to senior college centers, and we visit other voluntary groups and talk about the climate crisis and how to make good climate choices. Often we have songs. We have a group singing, as many others. In Aarhus, for instance, we have a choir. They're singing very many voices. Everybody are allowed to sing with us. And we have a person writing our songs herself. Now we try to adapt our communication more to personal values of people. We have learned that you cannot push people into meaning something. So when we have the dialogues in the streets, we try to move the question back to the person. How would you like to see the government act, and how would you like to act if you could? And we try to make a better future, make visions of better future. We were very happy in 2019 when we had this governmental elections that was called a climate election. It started very, very good, but with a national goal of 70% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions in 2030 and neutrality in 2050 and going further back to, forth to 2045. And there should be a goal of reduction about 54% in 2025. But the government has got problems with that. We have meetings with policymakers in Parliament or outside Parliament. We also have a group in Copenhagen who are meeting every Thursday in front of Christiansborg. And it's not only BEDSTEFORELDRENES KLIMAAKTION, but it's also other groups. And they have now this hour when the politicians are coming in to Christiansborg. And they stop the politicians and try to talk them in between. And they have also speeches for themselves, learning something. There are input to climate action plans in the communities and in many of the towns. And we have also input concerning things like biodiversity or green area in towns, in our towns and communities around. And of course, we are looking at the town council's agenda every time they have meeting and trying to find out whether we should meet at the meeting and be better informed so we can possibly make comments that everybody are allowed to do. Okay. How do we reach new members? We do it, for instance, this way. We have a place in Aarhus where we meet with all our staff, many informations. We can talk about the overshoot day and donut economy, and about how we pollute with our consumption. And we are also participating in meetings about all these infrastructure projects that are going on. The meetings we have in Aarhus are all in Midtown, and we are very happy to be there. We have meetings once a month for decisions and information, what's going on in the groups. And we are meeting, we are having actions at town hall with other people. With other of the groups. Very often, it's often it can be very serious, and also throw in between we have songs just to loosen up how we feel. We have this climate public meeting once a year, Climate Folkemøde, and we were there too with a talk to people coming there. That was a huge meeting and very nice to be there. Sitcom is a new demonstration form we use in Aarhus, and it's really effective, and people are stopping, and it's outside the railway station, so we can sit there and people can walk both ways, so we don't stop them. But they can't miss us, and they can stop and talk to us, but we are not talking very much ourselves. this is just a picture of some of the singers that we have, and also we try to have nice times in between, and when we have had actions outside, and we shall not forget that. In Denmark, people are getting more and more serious about how the problem is about climate crisis. As you see here, this new survey says that 61% that climate change is the most serious problem in the world now. And the number 2 is armed conflicts, and that's for 46%. And poverty, hunger, and shortage of drinking water is 42%. So it's really getting high in Denmark now. And 71% say that it's an extremely serious problem, compared to 38% in 2020 and 43% in 2022 in another survey from Concito. So that's much more than in Finland. And yeah. So your climate actions, Danes, there has been another survey, I can't talk so much about it now, but it shows that Danes are very willing to do a lot. They think it's a serious problem and they're willing to do a lot, but without really doing anything still, because it's very difficult for them to change their lifestyle. So this is just a nice picture from my beach, where we still can go bathing in very hot water or warm water, and you feel happy and you feel sad at the same time, because it's not the right time of the year, but still we try to enjoy it. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna-Grete. Now it's time to go to the panel discussion. We have 10 minutes, and I would like to ask the speakers, our 3 first speakers, Bente, Lena, Matti, and Anna-Grete, to come up here, and we will try to ask them some wise questions and get some wise answers. And I'll just check my Slido, what's in there.
Like this.
There are some questions in Slido, but you can also raise your hands, and I'll do my best to repeat the questions, or there might be even a mic going around, we'll see. So, thank you for your presentations. The most popular question. There are coming more. Great. The most popular question in Slido is, do you think it's possible to have an organization dedicated to climate issues but still disagree about politics? And does everybody have the same goal despite this? It's a little bit the same as we discussed yesterday. I mean, can you somehow join forces in an organization like this, even though you have different political background and you are right-wing, left-wing, or whatever? Or does it create problems? Who will start? Right.
Okay. Well, yes, I do. I think that we should stress that this is not a left-wing, right-wing question at all. It's a question about all other political questions. Perhaps the solutions will be a problem.
Have you had any problems within your organizations because of different political views or values or whatever?
No, we have not. Okay.
Well, we have sometimes in our organization or movement had people who wanted to be more radical and more political. And then they have sometimes left, not often, but it has happened they have left the movement to be free to be as they want to be. We have also now in our part in Aarhus, we have people coming from borgerlige, right-wing persons, and that's very interesting. And one of them is the most radical of all of us to participate in actions. And he do it another way somehow, and he can go to the politicians in a way they want to listen, the people who would perhaps not listen to us. So it's an interesting time now, for us at least. We try that now.
Anything to add, Matti?
Well, I mentioned here the far-right party, but we don't, in our discussions, we don't name the parties as such, and we would be very, very eager to find an MP because there are different peoples in the MP groups, and even though there is one minister openly denying, I'm sure that among the MPs. But we have to work on that and find an MP who could be then our grandmother or godmother and godfather in far right, because I'm absolutely sure that they are worried too.
Just shortly, on the other hand, I agree with the other, but on the other hand, there is some criticism against, for example, Greta Thunberg for brooding a message to equality issues between rich and developing countries and so on. So the criticism exists.
Yeah. Something is happening in Slido. Things are moving back and front. I'll just take here two questions. I'll try to combine two questions. Both are related to the attention you get or don't get. One of them is to the Swedish people, whether you are satisfied with the media attention, bearing in mind that young people somehow do not pay attention to your demonstrations, and then a little bit the same to Denmark. What do people ask about when you are doing your sitting demonstrations? So in one question maybe, are you satisfied with the reach out? Are you satisfied with the response you get? Oops.
You never get satisfied with that, I think. But we have had a very satisfying cooperation with a local paper publishing every third week, I think, or every second week. There we... in a cooperation with a paper, we could write an article, I don't know the word for krönika, but an article in the newspaper about climate issues and so on. Unfortunately, we have we are not allowed to write every third week any longer, but every once a month or something like that.
Mm. Okay, but I think with the new government, I think it's obvious that the papers do not write so much about climate issues anymore. So there's some difference. But we also have this problem with the shootings. You know that? Criminal groups shooting at each other, and they also shoot bypasses. So let's take much of the media headlines. Yes.
Recently, we had a journalist in the working in the media, the Danish media, Danish television and radio, who raised the awareness about that the press wasn't doing enough. They were not raising awareness enough to people. Also because the parliament is not working very well about it. And after that, that's only 1.5 months ago or something like that, it's changed a lot, and perhaps it's a coincidence, but there have been so much. Every day we have news and talking about both what's going on in our own country and outside. And when we had this sitcom the other day, that was just last week, we were contacted by a journalist from a Danish radio, and she asked if she could follow us that day. She was going to follow a lot of others same day because we had a national climate action day in schools, in high schools that day. And also there were 2 other organizations, green youth organizations, that were acting and had an action the same day. So that evening, after the weather report, that is always talking about climate some way, some other another way, they had a quarter, 50-minute interviews and following old and young activists that day, and that was a very good feeling. And when we were, she was talking to us. After that, there came another journalist who worked nearby. He had seen what was going on, and then he came and took also an interview for the radio. So it is changing, I hope.
Yeah, how is it in Finland about the media attention? Do you get the increasing attention, or?
You mean the grandparents, climate grandparents?
Yeah, and
not really. Activist grannies got more than us, and we are happy with that. Mm-hmm. And but also, I must say that one thing what is good being openly a grandparent, and of course what we are doing as a grandparent, we are always doing a legal demonstrations, and some is confusing us with the Extinction Rebellions who are blocking the roads and doing such things. And well, they are doing the right things, but we want to step far further away, and we are ready. Grannies and grandpas are harmless.
So you are very polite.
Oh no, sorry. We try to look like.
Questions from you guys?
Not actually a question, but I would very much like that somebody, maybe you, afterwards collect all the addresses to the web pages and all the social media addresses so that we can follow what's happening and we can share.
Yeah.
That would be really helpful. Because I tried to find was it Grandparents for the Future, but I went to it was a German website that I found. So it's not easy to find.
No. I think it's something we should be able to do, because maybe in the same way we need to find out the best way to do it, but we might be able to just have a website to begin with on an environmental web page or something, because Facebook events, etc. disappear, but web pages do not easily disappear. So we might, at the same time as we try to share with all of you, or share with everyone, the presentations from today and from yesterday, we should be able on the same page to collect all the links we have, and then you could add by sending us comments that we could use at this, etc. At least as long as we are working on this, because of course we are just a company somewhere in the middle of nowhere, just working for the government right now, and we have to discuss also with the ministry how to keep this alive, because we just have a contract and it will run out, and the web page can remain there even though it's on our pages, but sooner or later it should have some kind of a more permanent home, and maybe if you manage to sort of establish a Nordic network, it can be moved to there to keep in one place all the information we have gathered that, somehow could help the national organizations in their work and to keep the contacts. Kira.
Also would like to have this contact, even though I'm not a granny yet. I would really much like to be part of this. And also about media attention, how do we, that's a question for all of us that we could also bring into this group. How do we make climate and grandparents' engagement in climate stay a hot topic, not just towards media, but towards our populations? That would be very helpful if we could help each other also, because we are many people that would like to support the groups, the political, climate political groups. So in order to do that, we need to have the information and also the little tips and tricks and what are they doing in Finland and Switzerland and so on. And that would be nice.
Thank you. Thank you for that. It's something to consider. And sorry, online participants, you might have missed this discussion completely, but the comments from the audience are about how to keep the information we are sharing here. We should somehow keep and make available the links and some comments on how the different organizations are building contacts to media and how they are getting attention. And it would be great for all organizations involved, even though they are not entirely focused on seniors and climate, it would be nice for all of them to have access to some kind of a central space where all this information can be kept and made visible. I hope I managed to somehow summarize this discussion for you online participants. Yeah, I think time is running out and a little bit more. We're sort of, some 10 minutes too late. So let's take a break now. Thank you very much. And we have 20 minutes break. Fifteen, 20 minutes break. Well, I think it's time. I think it's time to continue, so please take a seat. We have one session of presentations left. We have, as I said, we have one session left with 3 presentations. Then we have a short panel discussion. Then we have our group work. It will be given a short time frame, even shorter than yesterday. And then we will have some food, and then we will go on this trip to the Reykjanes Peninsula. And I should inform you, and I can as well do it now as later, that we have rearranged the trip a little bit. We are still going to Reykjanes Peninsula, but it's not exactly the same as we have described before. And it's just for practical reasons, because we have to coordinate things like weather and when we can drop by and have coffee, where we can have, where we can, go to the toilet, etc., etc. So we have rearranged it a little bit, but you will find out. We are still going to the same area. We are not seeing exactly the same things as we were planning to, but mainly it's the same. Just, I hope you will not be disappointed, even though we have rearranged it a little bit. But anyway, now let's go to the last session of presentations. We have 3 presentations ahead of us, and the first person to come here is from the Friends of Icelandic Nature, HJÁLMAR Árnason, and he will give a speech on older people in nature conservation. Þú ert ekki með glærur, er það? Nei, ok, great. Jú. Hafði hann ekki ofnálægt? Nei.
Yes, hello, good morning. My name is HJÁLMAR Árnason, a former educator and a former politician. I was asked to give a short presentation on a group of volunteers called WÍN. and in Scandinavian language that could mean wine. But unfortunately, our work is not on white wine or red wine. It stands for Vinir Íslenskrar náttúru, Friends of Icelandic Nature. Before I go into that, I'd like to share with you a conversation I had last night with my son, 40 years old. I was telling him that I was going to this meeting. And he started laughing. Why on earth are you old people isolating yourself and discussing this very important issue, climate change? And in a way, he's right. It's the same as came in the last panel, that when you are discussing climate change, we don't discuss that on left or right, because it is an issue that should touch all of us. We should work together, young and old, white and black, fat and slim, all together. That is a point. In a way, he was right. But then we can look at it from a different point of view. In Iceland, when you get 67 years of age, or at least 70, you are old. And you are dysfunctioned. You become like a soccer player that is taken out of the team because you are too old. Although you could kick the ball again, but if you are too old in age. And in a way, as you have discussed here, that is in a way a waste of values. Because, well, I know some people that are 45 years of age, but they are very old. Some few weeks ago, I was traveling in beautiful Helsinki with former politicians. Two of them were extremely young, around 80 years old. 80, not 18, 80 years old. So what is old? I think that's a valid question. Here in Iceland, taking people out of society, so to speak, because of age in numbers, is in a way a waste. So what can you do when you reach that limit? Climate change, of course, shouldn't have any limits, but what do you do when you get older, losing your hair, as Bill sang? You either give up and say, I am out of order, or you find yourself a forum where you can use your effort, use your experience, use your education, use your network and all that. And that is how WIN, Friends of Icelandic Nature, was. That's the reason they were established. And it was 41 persons, mostly PhDs, former directors of institutions here in Iceland, like the Institution of Natural Science, and so on and so forth. People that had reached that limit, that they were dysfunctioned. And what is the purpose of WIN? And yes, just let me tell you, when I started to prepare what I'm going to say, I started to create some slides. But then I thought, hey, let's be a bit original and go back to the basis and rest you from the slides. So it's only the oral word. The purpose of WIN is to, in short, to increase awareness of the general public with respect to biodiversity, diversity in Icelandic nature. And that is a big issue which touches on almost everything in our life, in our environment. We started 2 years ago, and as 41 persons. I am not from the natural science sector, so to speak. I'm a former educator. Now we have doubled the size of, or the number of members, and we have got in scientists, more scientists, lawyers, artists, and so on and so forth. And have we made some effort? Yes. That's one of the proof for that is that I'm standing here. Wien was asked to give a presentation on what they are doing, what we are doing. And I think we have also been able to start some discussions, at least in the media and among the general public. In those 2 years, we have focused on one thing: trees. And we are in war against trees. That's strange when we are talking about climate change. We have to go back in history about 1400 years ago when Norwegian fugitives left Norway and went to Iceland, picking up some Irish woman on the way. Iceland, we have documentation saying that Iceland was grown by trees from the lowest beach to the highest mountains. True or not, but that seems to be so. But as you probably, if you have traveled around Iceland, you can see there is not so much of trees today. That's because we have, during the ages, we have cut down the trees for house heating, for as a part of process in creating tools, swords and tools for agriculture, and for smoking lamp. And since the age of 800, from the 800 to about 1200, climate average temperatures were higher than it is today. So man and the climate change have, so to speak, destroyed our roots. So when we, as human beings, when we don't have something, we have the urge to get it. So during the last 50 years, we could say that the Icelandic nation has started to plant trees. And today, you could say that the biggest wood in Iceland, biggest forest, is the forest of Reykjavik. In almost every house, you can see trees. And farmers all around the island are starting to plant trees. Then they get money from the government. And now we are going into something that is worth giving some thoughts. Forestry is becoming a business. It is like in the Catholic Church, you could buy leather to neutralize your sins. It's a carbon business. And we have big companies, foreign companies and Icelandic companies that are paying money for planting trees. And that could become a big problem. And some of the trees, especially the fir, the natural tree in Iceland is the birch. The smell of birch is the smell of Icelandic summer. But we have been convinced that just plant a tree anywhere, what kind of tree, any kind of tree, anywhere. And that is a problem. And that is what we are focusing on today, this Wien. The army of Wien. Because we have international obligations, so to speak. Grass and lowland grass without trees are the ideal home of at least 12 species of birds that come from different continents, from Africa, from America, from Asia, to lay their eggs and nest here in Iceland. They don't nest in trees. They nest in flatland with moss, with flowers, and so on and so forth. And now we see that in a big part of this, the government plans to plant 7 million trees every year, the coming years. Companies are coming in, farmers are planting trees. So what we fear is that those trees will destroy the nesting land of the birds. And we have international obligations to protect this land in a way, like the SPOE. Does anyone have the name, English name for it? Well, there's one species that come all the way from Senegal over here to lay their nests, and they don't lay their nest in trees. This is what WIEN has been doing, just this only this focus, because we cannot focus on everything, every issue. We have a very bad experience of planting lupin into Iceland. And lupin has been very aggressive, as well as we see the fura in Icelandic. It's a very aggressive tree. Even in Norway and in New Zealand, the government is starting to pay money for cutting down trees like fir in some places. So that is what WIEN is pointing out. We have to be careful. We have to make a policy. We are not against trees, but we have to make a policy. What do we want to have trees? Where would we like to have unprotected land for future generations? I think we have been able to write articles in newspapers. We've been able to get interviews in national television, and we have noticed that some people agree with us, but the forest people do not agree with us. So what we are asking for is we need to have a policy, where to have trees and where do we want to protect the land. We are very happy to say that in our little army, where we have PhDs, we have former professors of natural science, so on and so forth, but young people are joining WIEN now. So it's not only for older people. So we are old in numbers, but we have young spirit and we have fighting spirit, because we have obligations for the future, for our children and grandchildren. So just finally, although we have this age in number, we are able to do a lot of things if we are joined forces. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hjálmar. Our next speaker comes from the Faroe Islands. This gentleman, Ólafur Pálsson, from the Nature and Environmental Organization in Faroe Islands. I'll find your slides.
And on top of that, I am elderly people. and you know that the climate crisis is urgent, so therefore I have to use my time very well. Yeah. And I think all of us are using the time optimal to be just here at this very moment, to optimize our work. Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you understand me?
You will use this one anyway.
I shall use this to reach out on the net, maybe. Yeah. Here we are. Yes. Thank you very much, Stefan and Inga-Loa. And we also are thankful for the support from the Nordic Council of Ministers to support this event. We know, all of us here today, that action is needed. And knowledge is one main point, as you mentioned just before, knowledge. And today, our generation do have a lot of knowledge, and we are able to communicate knowledge. So we have to do our best, and what we are doing just now is the very best.
We are coming from the Nordic countries, and we are in the center, so we shall try to take care of this. I represented the local organization in the Faroes, which was founded about the same time as it was in Norway and Iceland. In the late 70s, the environment was on the agenda in the Nordic countries. And I was here in Iceland, at that these years, and I got inspired of Iceland, and also just later in Norway. And that the main issues was the environment and energy production, because we were building huge hydropower plants, some of them a bit too big. And the last inspiration I got, that was especially Greta Thunberg, who she make aware of this, and the Norwegian organization BESTEFORELDRENES, KLIMAAKTION. What we have, what we have actual today in the Faroe Islands, we have a very high emission, and that's because of fishing our fleet, yes, but it could be lower. And it's also because of electricity production. And the change has been very, very, very slow to go into green energy transition, very slowly. So here is the inspiration from Norway, from Iceland, and from Greta, not at least. And my area, you may say, is on top of the general interest. So micro hydropower is my special. And I went to Norway, by the way, and I met Erik Solheim. He have a similar machine in his backyard. And he was founder of the Norwegian Nature Protection Society. So let us see our emission. It is divided here. The lighter red color is at sea, and the darker color is on shore. At sea, we are fishing, but we are not fishing efficiently in accordance to oil consumption. We have we have many ships, vessels, unnecessary many. Equipment are not either optimal, but we have too many vessels, and our fishing stocks are in bad conditions because we have been fishing too much. And that means that we are using even more oil to catch our fish. So there we can do, and you know about the fleet or ships that Maersk has just starts to change to methanol. We have said so far that, and still we don't have the technique for green power for fishing vessels. And what Maersk said, we should have started for many years ago to take this seriously. For we know from COVID, you can make a huge work within a short time if you really take it seriously. And onshore, we use electricity production and heating our houses. That's most of it. Electricity production is made by oil, heavy fuel, and heating our house are with oil. But today we have heating pump is an issue, so people are changing to heating pump. There's that big demand that there is shortage, it's a long time to deliver the heating pump, and the price sometimes go a bit up for the same reason. And the car, yeah. So this is just another way to see our energy consumption on shore, at sea and on shore. And then we have a little bit of hydro power. And we have just started to produce electricity with wind. Got our first windmills, yeah, so some few years ago. And the windmills are promising, especially after the technique with the synchronous compensators and the batteries are involved, because we have an isolated grid. We are not connected to other countries with cable, so it's a challenge to make this as the wind is changing, and we don't have big reservoirs for water. There will be a small pump storage, but built in the future. Yeah, we have also been involved in this Friday for Future Klimastrike, and that increased the awareness. No doubt about that. So that was, and is very important, yeah. So in mission, again, and what you can see, that we have increasing emission from 16 or up to now, and that is even not everything, because let us forget it. Not everything is included, so we have even more emission that we can. For instance, the aviation, the planes coming and going, they are not included in our emission because we buy the oil in Keflavik or Copenhagen, so it's not our problem. And we have a little bit in 2022, a little drop because of shortage of fish and because of a lot of rain and wind. So that is the reason. In the long term, we have not any decrease at that. And we are the best in the world, or the worst in the world, yeah. Per capita, you can't see it, but the bottom line is the Faroe Islands. And again, that is more or less the same. That is, sorry. This is the electricity production, yeah. Actually, the black one, that is the oil, heavy fuel. And then we have the water hydro part. And then the last, since 2016, the wind starts to be a good, or at least a part of the electricity is produced by green energy. And a little bit on the top that is the biogas, but yeah. This is a Danish graph. We use, as an individual or people, a typical person, in them, use, or in average, for transport. Therefore, we have focus on electrical cars or public transport. Then is our food. Then is our house, and the black one there is for heating. And so therefore we are, to speak about transport is you can see a big issue here. That's in Denmark in this case. We know all this picture. scaring picture, but in 2020, it was reduced quite a lot without no problem, because we could have a net meeting and so on. So it's easy to decrease the aviation now. And the same with this vessel ships, that could be reduced. So what can we do? What can I do? That is to reduce consumption is, and to change to greener solutions where that's possible, and to get informed, to get information, and to participate, to be involved as you have, and support green solutions, and boycott or don't support gray, black solutions, and then the politicians who will work for that. Reduce consumption, use our goods a little bit longer, our clothes and cars and whatever, not be that quick to throw away, repair, it was mentioned yesterday, and increase our knowledge. That is to have a network. And there is one thing I think I will mention it now. And some of us, I am especially thinking about micro-hydro power electricity production now. So if we had in this network, Nordic network, specialists, so to ask about forest and tree, some of the HJÁLMAR would be a specialist and could give advice for, that could be an idea. And sometimes we hear protest before wrong decisions. Yes, we know about that. When it is, we are in this year's discussing in the Faroes, shall we continue to explore for oil and give license to looking and drilling for oil? Unfortunately, we have not found oil yet, but the government like to continue. Apropos government, so we have, the climate issue is on the agenda with the government. And we have even for this, after the last election, a ministry for environment only, so including this, and a young minister, female, elected because of climate change. So we are in good, and we have easy also to be get in contact with the press, the television, and so on. And we have a lot of good statistics, and the university in the Faroes, quite young university, and it is increasing in activities and in numbers of students, and so things are going in the right directions at some important area for us. What do we have here? And when we are uncertain, you know, the headlines this morning was about the nuclear in Denmark. So what do specialists, which know everything about nuclear, say in a short message? And for instance, participate, it has been mentioned here, in different or in organization fighting against climate change. And the politicians, and we do have good information. We have people and equipment to give us the information needed. It is up to us. It is up to us to ask for more information, and it is up to us to inform and recommend. And it did work. If we take the electrical cars in Norway, it is quite an efficient change from 40 to 80% within 5 years of the car went electrical. I suppose this is correct figure, but it doesn't matter. It is anyway about that. And we can all make difference, some more and other. And to make a difference, you get happy when you have make a difference. So you are more happy to make a difference in the right direction than to be spending more money or using more material or whatever. So I will say thank you. You didn't stand up. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ólafur. As you can imagine, the reason for why I was not standing was that you were completely within your time frame, which is good. Now we have only one presentation left, and that one comes from Bente BAKKE, coming from Norway, representing BESTEFORELDRENES KLIMAAKTION, and she will talk about the local work organizations and also advantages and disadvantages of membership fees, because that's one of the questions, one of the interesting questions we are seeking answers to. Should we stay in the grassroots or, get bigger and have some finance to engage in stronger actions, etc.? Så Bente BAKKE, varsågod.
Thank you very much. And I have to put my hat on because red is the color of the heart, and it represents the love we have for our grandchildren. And I have to thank for the invitation to this conference. Grandparents Climate Campaign in Norway is an organization established in 2006 with members from many Norwegian parties. Andrew Kroglund, our director, has told you about the central organization. Locally, we are very active, having many stands, talking to people, giving them information material, and recruiting new members. Have you a picture of who is doing the pictures here? The next picture is coming now. Do I print? Yeah. No? Okay, thank you. There you see in front of the parliament our grandparents from Oslo and some other local groups in 2019. We were supporting children skipping school, calling for climate action. And Greta Thunberg is the great ideal. Our organization in Oslo usually has an action in front of parliament every month, handing out leaflets and talking to those who pass by. I am 80 years old. I think I'm the oldest person here today. And I have a background from press and policy. I was a member of parliament from 1981 to 89 for the Conservative Party, Høyre. As a spokesperson for the environment, I discovered a lack of an environmental policy in the party program. But my work was not appreciated. I was not re-elected for a new period in parliament, And many years later, I gave up Høyre and became a member and a local politician for the Green Party. The grandparents have 17 local groups, from Alta and Tromsø in the far north, Bergen on the west coast, to Kristiansand in south. I am a member of the board in Indre Østfold, a municipality close to Sweden in the south of Norway. Here we have good contact with the local government administration and the local parties. Here you see one of the many stands we arranged in Indre Østfold this year. This is held in a local shopping center where we always get good response from customers passing by. And you see, you see the roll-up we have there. That is very important to be seen. So I recommend that you make such. Equinor planned in 2022 to develop a big oil field, Wisting, in the vulnerable area in the Arctic. All environmental organizations, including the grandparents, demonstrated in front of Parliament, and luckily we won the struggle then. And here you see in the local paper in Indre Østfold, having an article with a picture of myself and one of our workmates demonstrating against Wisting. And it is very important to have a good contact with the local press. Almedalsveckan in Sweden has inspired Norway to arrange Arendal Week in August every year. The grandparents have been there for many years, arranging meetings, having stands, and doing climate wandering. Here you see two of our members climate wandering in Arendal, using our red hats and our body posters with our important messages. The children's climate is our matter, and stop all searching for oil. This is from the stand in Arendal in August this year. My little climate dog, Bruno, was as usual a good supporter, wandering around with me and being an extra attraction. He always made it easy to meet and talk with people, especially children. The grandparents in Trondheim are very active, and they often are out in the streets having stands and singing climate songs. Here you see them, 7 members in Trondheim, arranging a quiz about renewable energy. And it's a sad fact, renewable investments in Norway has fallen with 40% since 2018, and only 0.15% of Equinor's production is renewable. Norway is still betting on oil and gas despite better knowledge. When I became a member of the grandparents in 2010, I bought 1 share in the Norwegian oil company Statoil, now Equinor. This gives me the right to meet at the General Assembly and present my proposals. And here you see 4 members from the grandparents at the Assembly. Sorry to say, our proposals are voting down every year by the Norwegian state's representative. He votes for 67% of the shares. We also had a stand outside Equinor's headquarters in Stavanger. People are generally not aware of the fact that the government this year has proclaimed
139 new areas for searching for oil and gas, most of them in the Barents Sea. The government and the majority in parliament don't listen to FN's General Secretary Antonio Guterres. He has declared code red and told all countries to stop oil searching. Since the election 2 years ago, Equinor has used enormous amounts on greenwashing advertisements in the national media. They have convinced many students that it will be profitable to go in for a career in oil business. The company is also supports many cultural and sports events with big money. This makes it difficult for green companies to recruit competent workers. Oil business nearly takes them all. I have been asked to comment on the advantages and disadvantages of membership fees. The grandparents have always operated with membership fees, and I'm convinced this is a great advantage. It would be impossible to finance all our activity without this. I have given you this, and you must take one with you home. It's on the table. We have had many information leaflets during the years. This year we have a picture on the front of our leader, Linda Parr, with her granddaughter. On the back is information of how you can become a member, either by using our internet page or by email. The fee is Norwegian crowns 300 for main members, 150 for supporting members. On the back is on the back we have a picture of our highly respected member, Kåre Willoch. He was Prime Minister for Høyre in the 80s. He died in 2021, but his widow allowed us to use the picture and quote his statement in Arendal Week in 2019. Membership fees has helped us to finance both the central and local work. We are also financing groups writing reports about important issues. We have had two with us here, one blue and one green. Some of them we print and others you can read on the net. We also have a central and many local Facebook groups and recruit members also by Facebook. This is a good example of a report that should be read by politicians and other important people. In my local organization, we plan to give this to all the party groups' leaders in the local government. We hope it will help them to take good decisions for the climate and nature the coming period. Voluntary organizations in Norway, with more than 5,000 paying members, get economic support from the government. And we have now 6,800 members. And this year we totally will receive Norwegian crowns 2,056,000. I hope you have systems in other Nordic countries with governmental economic support to organizations like we have in Norway. And thank you all for your attention, and many thanks to you that have made this marvelous adventure possible.
Thank you so much, Bente. Now it's time to go to our last panel before we go to the group work. And I would like to ask the three last speakers, Hjálmar, Ólafur, and Bente, to come here. And we will try to get answers to all of the questions that we are waiting for to be clarified. I'm sure you've been using Slido a lot, so now I'll find out in my Slido app what are the most important questions to these people. Yeah, there is some voting going on. So the most popular question on the list is, do you feel that you can accomplish more as an organization when you have a very narrowed down goal, like Wien has in Iceland with the main interest in forestry, or is it better to have some wider focus? Should you focus on some more specific issues, or should you try to cover the whole spectrum? What's your opinion? Hjálmar, if you start.
With a small army like Wien, and a young army, we decided to have a narrow, just take one point and focus on that. And I think we have succeeded in doing that. But as the number of participants and members of Wien will increase, we will broaden our focus. And there are a lot of issues to address. But in Iceland as well, I think in the Faroe Islands, in small societies, it is easier to get access to the media and to people writing articles and going on local or national TV. But if we have in mind the younger generations, they don't read newspapers. They even don't watch the television. That's boring. So we have to use the social media if we want to get access to the younger generations, and we need to do that. And therefore, again, we also need, as older people, to work with them, as you have done in Norway and others have mentioned here. So use social media, and that's where we will meet the young people. And we need to do that. We need to get a message to the young people, because they will be taking over, hopefully.
Yes, I can agree upon that, and I have noted here that we take one issue at a time. You must say. We have been focused on the oil drilling and exploration, and we have been focusing on climate change law, shall be binding law limits, and now, actually, it is biodiversity, and the next will be cooperation with elderly people. So, and thank you very much, Beata, for your good yesterday lecture. Yeah.
Bente, specific or general?
Yeah, in Norway, our main message is, of course, stop all oil searching. That is a great problem. But we take up other issues too locally. But we never forget that message. And concerning young people, in my local organization, we have been to the schools for videregående skole, yeah, and talked to them. And that was a very nice experience, and we will do more of that. But in Norway, we say, it looks hopeless, but we can't give up.
May I just add to this? If we go to many wars at the same time, you will lose them all. But therefore, it is important to sharpen the focus, not too many wars at the time. Because if you have a small army, you can't go to all wars.
I can add one question, even it's not in Slido, because now we've been talking about whether the focus should be sort of narrow or specific, or whether it should be more broad, where we are trying to fight everything at the same time. We could rephrase the question in the way, who should be our or your target group? Because you were talking about the importance of reaching out to young people, not only to reach out to your generation, but then should you focus maybe more on the authorities, the government? Because it was also discussed yesterday how important it is to empower people, to make them feel somehow their strength to make changes. But then it comes to my mind, okay, if you are an individual or if you are a company, you have limited possibilities to make changes, because the government decides the rules of the play. So it's very hard for an individual, it's very hard for a company to be the first one to carry out changes. Like, I might decide, as many of you have decided, not to travel or to limit it to one trip per year or something overseas. You can do something like that. And there are some role models, like in Norway, that really have come with this message: I cannot fly. I can only allow myself to do it once a year or something like that. Okay, what I'm saying is we might have limited possibilities to make changes by ourselves, because by doing it, we are somehow, losing some comparative battles. It's more obvious in the corporate world, because if one company decides not to produce this and that is harmful for the environment, then just everyone else is making money out of it, and you are getting out of business, or you are losing the competition. You will lose your competitive advantage. So my question is, should the focus be more on the governments and less on empowering people, because they cannot change anything, basically, except from who they vote for? Should the focus be on young people, old people, people in general, or first of all on the governments?
I can try to answer as a former politician. What politicians are most afraid of is the next election. Voters. So that means in the long term, we need to focus on the general public to increase awareness with information, and again information. Then people will wake up, and we can point out that the general public can have impact on our society in voting, giving the right vote. So awareness from people to government rather than top-down, from authorities to people. That's my opinion.
I fully agree.
Yeah. Let the former politicians answer this.
Yes, in Norway we also are talking to the politicians, and they both nationally and locally there were hearings, and we write answer to the hearings. For example, the government's announcement of new oil areas, searching areas, and locally, this was a local election this autumn. And locally, we made comments to the plan, or a real plan, what do you call it? A real plan. Because what they decide to build down and is very important for the climate.
Spatial planning.
We have had very good response from the local authorities. They are glad that we exist. That I think it's an important issue.
maybe to add to this, with increased awareness of people, general public, they can have impact on elections. And having impact on elections, you might have impact on the national policy with the political parties that will win the elections. But also with increased awareness of the general public, that might change their behavior, the greediness as consumers. So I think all arguments tell us to increase the awareness of people, both with respect to politics and our own behavior as consumers.
Just add shortly that one problem, big problem is that, and that is general for the election, we will do this and this and this, and you know when it is the politicians, when they are there and be there, yeah, no, it's not possible, and so they don't stand with what they have promised, and of course they shall be reminded on that very clearly and strongly before the next election. But the voters are very important, and the awareness and the Danish Anne-Grete said just before that when she met in contact with this and was aware about the problem, she could not return to the. She went involved to participate. Yeah.
Locally, we have made a list of 10 points that how to live more friendly for climate and nature. And we are planning a meeting next month about this. And then we get support from our local government. And that, I think, is positive.
We have a question from the audience. Now we have a microphone to make it heard.
Okay, just shortly, talking to right-wing politicians, it might be good to remember that the symbol for the right wing, Margaret Thatcher, had a very, very emotional speech in UN, I think it was in the 80s, where she talked about the climate change, the threat of the climate change, and the need to cooperate all over the world to combat climate change. Just a reminder.
Some questions from the audience? Eric?
One question to you, Hjalmar. There is, as far as I know, a nature protection society in Iceland, NATUR Islands. Is that correct? And was that not interested in the climate change? Sorry. I wonder, why did you start this Wien? You did not take away via the Nature Protection Society in Iceland.
Yeah, some of the members of that protection society are members of Wien, and I imagine that Wien was established because there were many individuals. So those who started Wien 2 years ago, they were retiring at in similar time. They were in similar age, and they were just, especially those who were leading it. How can we, as former scientists and PhDs, and with our knowledge, how can we continue to use our knowledge, to use our experience? And they thought this was the ideal opportunity to do that. But we are not working against the Protection Society, we're working with them.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess we will close this. Maybe I'll ask you one question. You don't need to answer, actually. But it also relates to this session before about social media. Have you considered to hire some younger people as some younger media experts to make you more visible on, for instance, TikTok? Who is active on TikTok in here? I don't see hands. Who are using TikTok? Really? No, me neither. Okay.
What do you do when you have problems with your iPhone or iPad? You give it to your grandchildren and they help you.
So it might be an idea to talk to your grandchildren to help them to make you visible on TikTok. I don't know how. Maybe you can do some dancing. I don't know. I don't know much about TikTok.
But it is important to be visible on a professional level in the media. And you need you need young people to do that support. Yeah.
TikTok is an idea, and I suppose that perhaps Andrew Kroglund would do something about that. But concerning younger people, when we have stands, we talk to many young people, and we give them our leaflets and say, go home and recruit parents and grandparents, and they say, yes, we will.
Okay, I think we will close this now and go to the group work. So I'll bring up here a slide about the tables. Like yesterday, we have rearranged who is sitting at what table. But before going to that, I would like to thank our online participants very much for their presence, and I hope you online participants, enjoyed this discussion, and you can turn off your computer with some good feeling about important things being done by these older people. So, because the online participants will not have the possibility to follow the group work. So I just want to say again to online participants, thank you for today and for yesterday. Thank you for your participation, and hopefully this was useful. Thank you. And now we are going to the group.